Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick Rugby Union podcast with your host Mark Kennedy. Joined this week by Liam O'Brien. Liam, how are things?
Great, Mark. We're still on cloud nine over that win at the weekend against the Stormers.
Again, lessons were learned by Munster Rugby as they went to the Cape and got a result against the Stormers, so we'll have a review of that. We'll also look at Connacht Rugby's 38-19 win over the Cardiff. Also, Leinster Rugby won late in Johannesburg against the Lions. Also, Ulster Rugby with a comprehensive win over Dragons. And there we'll have a preview, and also we'll get our crystal balls out here, Liam, in terms of predictions on our last 8 playoff fixture combinations. Suppose, Liam, let's start from the start. Cape Town, Stormers, Munster. Munster victorious 26-24, and I suppose Munster backs against the wall going into this fixture, but by God, that was a performance to really warm the cockles of the heart.
Yeah, it certainly was. I expected that we'd get the 4 tries or something along those lines, but it was the manner of the victory was so sweet. The fact that we were dominating the mauls, that we were bossing them at the breakdown, that we had to make serious inroads when we carried, we offloaded out of the tackle. Brilliant tries scored. So just a very, very good performance. And I suppose, look, the only thing is maybe 2 or 3 of their tries, we kind of gifted them, twice carrying the ball over our own line. I think Haley was once, and then we had Fekatoa. But that was it. I mean, they really didn't create anything else in the entire game. So I was massively impressed with Munster. And again, it kind of proves that we can do it when we get our scrum right, so we get our front row selected right, when you have 2 massive guys like Klein and Sneeman to power through in the second row. Arguably when you have Alex Kendellen probably playing his best position at 7, just when all those things align, Munster certainly can perform against any team.
I know when we spoke last and 2 weeks ago, we were a bit disconsolate regarding that Sharks performance. I was a bit critical of the performance, let's be brutally honest about it. Graham Rowntree has been at pains to say that there had been a bit of a retrospective within the Munster camp on how things went in that Sharks game. And I think you've covered an awful lot of the angles here in terms of the lessons learned were definitely applied from Munster Rugby from minute 1. I suppose it was a super opening quarter here, Liam. We really did punish the Stormers. Now, the Stormers coming off a very disappointing European Cup exit to Exeter Chiefs at Sandy Park. You can maybe factor in a little bit of the logistics in terms of travel. Stormers were slow to get out of the blocks, but very indisciplined as well. But fair play to Munster. Again, very clinical when they got into the red zone. And I mean, looking at the 2 Barron tries, they were very well worked and I think packed to the core here.
They were. I mean, look, it's kind of a statement of intent in the very first minute, the way it was Sneeman took it so clinically, and then Barron with the try. So that was a real start. I suppose we needed that too. But even from the first scrum, we were able to hold in our first scrum. There was no pushback there. Snyman was a very prominent taking the ball to the line and actually again offloading with his big lanky arms. And some things I suppose went right for us too. The Stormers at one stage they had a penalty reversed. For I suppose like it seemed in the first half that O'Mahony was being deliberately targeted or undeliberately targeted every time he got the ball, so that was a penalty reverse, and then of course there was a yellow card for another kind of crazy tackle on him. But I mean, and then 21 minutes we had Barron getting his second try, and just that sort of start was needed, I think, by Munster in that game.
Given how the pack had performed against the Sharks, I think the pack unit would have been hurting after that performance. And again, given the bye week, given the quarterfinals of Champions Cup, they really did come up with the front foot forward. I think, Snyman had to need the games, to be fair to him. Being trusting against the Sharks, I thought was a very impossible task for the South African international. But I think you can see the body of work here. The more game minutes he's getting, the more prominent he is. Such a fantastic physicality, in him in terms of his all-round play. Sean Klein as well, I thought, again, unheralded. Again, the work rate, again, from a second row was just incredible. Jeremy Lockman returns in at loose head. Dermot Barron as well was very accurate in terms of everything that he did. And also you had Stephen Archer there as well. So when you had that front 5, and as you said at the start of the podcast, being so cohesive, and then you have obviously Gavin Coombs, Peter O'Mahony was just a complete menace all day, and Alex Kendellen. I think, good things happened, but I suppose, Liam, we can get into the second quarter. I mean, Stormers really hadn't started. The home support was getting a little bit, dare I say, a little bit frustrated. But I think, to be fair to Munster, there was a few unforced errors, as you've kind of alluded to here. Got the Stormers back into it, and maybe it was a bit of a baptism of fire for Jack Crowley here a little bit, in terms of some unforced errors and being targeted by the first receiver here from the Stormers throughout that second quarter.
I still think he kicked very well, but yeah, he certainly, like, in terms of distribution, was kind of affected by that pressure that he was under. But again, you know, when we talk about kind of shooting yourself in the foot a bit, that Fekitoa back over the line, and then immediately afterwards, Matt Herb with a beautiful try in the corner, yeah. So that kind of certainly got them back into the game. But yeah, I mean, we had O'Mahony, you know, a menace at the line out, and in general, you know, I suppose we a few line out steals from O'Mahony, and then from Sneeman, and then again, you know, just before half time, Haley had to carry over the ball as well, to get them back for another try to have it actually level at half time. So for all of our good play and our domination in the first half, we were back to square one, really.
Yeah, and again, you could have said on another day, Craig Evans, the match official, could have been going into his pocket for a yellow card, given some persistent penalties from Munster as well. But look, I think the officiating here left a little bit to desire, particularly the incident and the camera footage of hands on Peter O'Mahony's face. I mean, for me, that's a clear red card. I don't know what Craig Evans and TMO are thinking there. I felt very kind of dubious decision, really, there, Liam.
Yeah. Look, it was again. It's always like the kind of third man in thing, you know, the reaction that's taken, and absolutely. I mean, you just can't put your hand on someone else's face like that. It's the same thing as punching him in the face, to be honest with you, isn't it? Really. And yeah, I thought that he could have seen red for that. Definitely, strange decision just to give the yellow.
So I suppose we're going into the sheds. 12 all at half time. Lubbock missing the conversion late here. So I suppose the key kind of phase here, and I think head coach for the Stormers kind of alluded to it post-game, the third quarter, Stormers starting on the front foot. But again, you have to credit Munster with some keen line-out steals. I thought defensive line speed was very abrasive, pretty aggressive from Munster, and some opportunities were squandered by the Stormers, and I think the Stormers have been left to rue that come the aftermath of this game.
Yeah, but again, I was going to be worried about that kind of 45th, 55th or 60th minute. I was going to be worried about that. What stage what the scoring was going to be at that stage, and obviously it's going to be positive for Munster. But look, I mean, things happened there in the second half, in the third quarter, where, you know, at one stage Lubbock kicked and it came back off the post, and Kendellen was clever enough to call for the mark, you know. Then we had more line-out steals from O'Mahony. Then we had, I suppose, the Stormers maul that actually was pretty much held up on the Stormers try lines. Those were all things that just basically kept us in the game. They definitely, I think, upped the ante in that third quarter. We kind of held firm, and that was quite crucial. And then, I suppose what was crucial at the end of that quarter was we had Daly on the edge scored actually a brilliant try, and that really changed the course of the game for me.
Absolutely. I think, as said here, lessons were learned from the Munster camp, particularly on that Sharks third quarter performance. And to be fair, they absorbed an awful lot of what Stormers had to throw at them. But that Daly try, I mean, Ben Healy's on at this stage, and I mean, I thought the Ben Healy pass, the assist, I think really does set up this try magnificently well. I thought the clinical nature of Munster here, particularly when they got into Stormers territory, I thought was very pleasing. I would think for the likes of Mike Prendergast, they would have realised that the Stormers would be kind of dominating an awful lot of possession and territory, and to make use of it once they got into the Stormers 22. But I mean, that was a magnificent pass from Healy. And I mean, Daly still had plenty to do here. But again, phenomenal pace from the Cork native to cross over for the third try, and I mean, that was a key score, as you say, Liam.
Because I mean, we were absorbing all that pressure before that, and I think as crucial then it was afterwards. You know, when you kick off again and you don't want to lose points. O'Mahony actually earned us a penalty, like literally directly after again. So again, that was another kick down the corner and momentum from Munster. But, I have to say that the Stormers did come back, Hitchoff going over after a maul. And again, what happened was that Libbok missed, I think missed on the day. I think it could have been 2 kicks from 7 from Annie Libbok. And a lot of them actually occurred in that final quarter, actually, for some reason. That was, I suppose, something crucial happened on the day as well. But we were lucky enough then to get the bonus point with Gavin Coombs going over under the posts. And so at that stage then, if worst comes to worst, we were going to have a lose a bonus point and a 4 tries. We had our 2. And I felt that we kicked on very well from there into the final 10 minutes, actually.
Absolutely. I thought we were the stronger team here, Liam. When the key decisions, key tussles were required, Munster were the ones on top. They looked the hungrier side. And to be fair to the Stormers, they've had a magnificent record in the Cape, in their home stadium, 2 years without losing a home game. So, I mean, this is a statement, from Munster Rugby. I mean, as you say, the Gavin Coombs try, thought that was a superbly worked try. I mean, the patience of the pack, to really kind of get into position here, and you're not stopping Gavin Coombs from that range. I mean, it was a superb try, and then also Healy's kicking, I thought was just absolutely on point throughout. I mean, yes, Joey Carberry pulled out late due to an injury sustained in training before it, but I mean, that Healy kick from the touchline was absolutely exquisite. And I mean, it's a key decisive score when you consider it's finished up 26-24, because the Stormers come back. I know the hooter sounds with Nell's second try, but I mean, that's a key kick from the sideline. I mean, that could define a season here for Munster for that one kick.
Absolutely. I mean, the guy, I suppose, when you're looking for a year 10 is a presence, and sometimes it's not that physical presence, but no. When Healy came on, it was noticeable how the game changed even further, and Munster almost went up the gears. And you say, as I said, that his initial impact was that beautiful pass to get Daly away, and then, as you said, that incredible conversion for Coombs' try. So I mean, that's hugely positive, I guess. And yeah, look, they got a try in the end, the Stormers, but I mean, it was quite a comfortable win, really, for Munster in that second half, I thought. And it gives us a lot of very interesting choices to make, such as Healy potentially starting, the next day, or if not that, starting in a potential quarter-final. That certainly has to be looked at this stage. I did notice that. I was kind of wondering, and apparently Archer was actually subbed in the 80th minute, apparently. I didn't really realise that. But so Archer was on pretty much 80 minutes, and then we had Lockman on for 75. So I suppose the point being, I'm not sure how much that Roundtree, who's a guy you'd respect, that his knowledge, how much he actually rates the other guys who were on the bench as options that day. So that'll be interesting to see in the next 2 games as well. Yeah,
I think you've raised a good point there in terms of front row. Obviously, there's going to be freshness coming in against the Sharks, so I would ultimately think the likes of Dave Kilcoyne, definitely at loose head, should be getting a significant cameo. I would also say, in terms of your tight head prop position, I think Archer and Lockman their cameos alone were just such an upgrade in terms of our front 5 performance. You're probably looking at Salano area in tight head prop against the Sharks. I mean, it's required. I mean, Barron is apparently nursing kind of a neck injury, but apparently not as serious as first thought. So I think from that perspective, I think you'll see freshness there. But I think this game for Munster, I think, was penciled in. This was the do or die game. They couldn't go to the next weekend and really be looking for a result. They wanted to take care of business now. And I think, to be fair, Liam, 5 points in this game has definitely secured an awful lot of certainty for Munster next season. I would think in terms of Champions Cup, but also in terms of the URC playoffs, really giving themselves a great position to secure that 5th spot. I mean, if they continue in that 5th spot, it's a potential away trip to Scotstoun against Glasgow Warriors, or if they were to finish 6th, it could be potentially against the Stormers down the Cape. Again, the 3rd trip down to South Africa is not probably going to be ideal. So I think Munster have set themselves up nicely now to really kind of, pressure's probably off them to a certain extent going to the Sharks in Durban this weekend.
Yeah, certainly not to the extent of it's not do or die against the Sharks really in terms of any sort of point or points will suffice. It's still not quite clear whether finishing, say, seventh even, is going to be sufficient to get into Europe next season. If, say, one of the teams from the URC actually ends up winning the Challenge Cup. But yeah, in terms of this weekend, you'd have to probably fancy the Bulls against a worn-out Leinster, probably getting over the line. So obviously we have to get at least a point. And again, I think the way even more so than the Stormers, the Sharks will gift us lots of opportunities to score tries. Kind of particularly from our back line, I can actually see that happening. So 1 point, and then we're almost certainly into fifth spot. And then, in terms of what's doable, it certainly is, as you point out, it's doable to go to Scotstoun or if you have to go even to Ravenhill. It's well doable to win a quarter final there. There's no doubt about it. The season is very much alive. Really, all the way to the final really is alive.
Yeah, I suppose let's get through next weekend anyway, round 18 anyway, Liam. But I suppose it's a terrific win. And, I mean, we could probably switch then to maybe the contract news within Munster. Announcement that Dan Goggin is departing the province, looking at overseas opportunities. And just confirmed today, Sean O'Brien arriving to Munster via Exeter Chiefs. I suppose your thoughts there on those two player movements? Yeah,
well, first, Dan Goggin, he's going, to my mind, he's going to a bit of a lower standard of rugby, I mean, he's going to kind of a club level in Australia, but I wish him the best of luck because let's be honest, he didn't really get that much game time during this season. But then he kind of left us in a predicament, obviously, that we had really only had 3 recognised senior centres. I mean, the only other centre was potentially, if you call that, it was Liam Coombs. So yeah, I mean, then we were looking immediately for another centre replacement. Sean O'Brien is a guy who has been playing regularly in midfield for Exeter Chiefs. He can play across a number of positions. So, I mean, look, in that sense, he's a good signing. He'll be competing directly then for a starting position next season, nothing about that. So I'm delighted that he has signed. It was kind of quite an astute signing, really, in terms of the players that were available. It certainly means our stock in terms of centre is quite looking stronger this next season.
Yeah, you throw in Alex Nankerville from the Waikato Chiefs that's moving over to Munster at the end of the off-season. So, I mean, it was important to reinforce particularly that three-quarters line because, as you say, Dan Goggin leaving, Malachi Figatoa off to Benetton Rugby, Chris Farrell obviously released early from his contract from Munster to France to pursue his playing career. So there was a bit of a gap there. So I think with Sean O'Brien, I think it's a glorious opportunity for him. He's very well rated in terms of Exeter Chiefs, also with Connacht Rugby set up when he was there a few seasons ago. And I mean, his versatility, he can play 12-13, he can play across the back three as well. So I think he'll embrace that opportunity, and I think there's opportunities for Sean O'Brien to really embrace stuff. But I suppose from Dan Goggin's perspective, opportunity knocks, new lifestyle, everything else in Australia. So we wish him well. I wonder if we're going to see maybe 1 or 2 more reinforcements coming in, particularly towards the end of the season, particularly, I would hope anyway, front row boys anyway, Liam. No, we've kind of spoken at length at that, but maybe we kind of devote that to another time. I suppose we can move to Sports Ground Galway. Connacht had a superb 38-19 win over Cardiff Rugby. Again, emotional night in Sports Ground, but several players departing stage left, including Andy Friend, Kieran Marmion as well. But I mean, I thought it was a Bundy Akai show here from start to finish. And again, and very much the damage done in that first half when they went 26-7 up.
Yeah, I mean, look, Connacht got it done in the first half, really, to give them credit. You could also, I suppose, look at that maybe, I don't know, are Cardiff really that poor as well, It's just hard to figure that out. But yeah, I mean, look, Connacht, the front row was excellent, very, very strong in the second row. Half-backs were really good. Keelan Blade again was absolutely excellent. And as you said, my God, Bundy Aki, fabulous game. And Mac Hansen, of course, as usual, roaming everywhere, trying to probe they played just brilliant rugby. That's what Connacht do.
I think you have to credit Andy Friend, the coaching staff, the players here. At the start of the season, we were kind of wondering where was it going to head for Connacht Rugby. But I mean, they've won 10 of their last 14 games here, Liam, and they've given themselves a massive opportunity, even heading into Glasgow Warriors Scotstoun next weekend for potential 5th place berth here if results went their way. I mean, they're playing in form. I mean, as we said, damage done at halftime, 26-7 up. Kilgallen's been very impressive for me for the cameos that he's basically come into the back three. Very impressive ball carrier. He's open to scoring. Tierney Martin, who's highly rated here in Connacht Rugby, gets the second. And then you had Conor Oliver, who's had an outstanding season for Connacht, with the third try. And then Bundy Akai sets up Mac Hansen for the bonus point before half-time. And I mean, I think we can talk about Cardiff Rugby all we want. They had plenty of possession in that second half, Liam, but again, they had an awful lot of issues, particularly in line-out, and some very much unforced errors here. Right-hand Connacht line, knock-ons, central. Yeah, again, Connacht plundered 2 late tries here. One was a penalty try, and Kieran Marmion, I think, got the biggest cheer of the night with his late try as well. I mean, Tom Young's try is fairly academic at the end of the day. So I think it was a pretty comprehensive result here for Connacht Rugby in all facets of play.
Yeah, absolutely was. As you said, they put a bit of gloss on the end, getting that end try. But super to see Kieran Marmion actually get a try on his last appearance there in Connacht. He's off to Bristol next season. He's pretty much been a one club man all his career in Connacht. So yeah, tremendous player, and I'm sure he'll be back in some capacity in the future. No doubt about that.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I think the love of the supporters for Kieran Marmion was out. It's there every week that he represents Connacht Rugby, but I thought there was particularly poignancy in terms of his cameo last weekend from a player perspective. Yeah, as you say, he'll be returning back in some shape or form. He owes the club nothing. But again, it was a pretty emotional farewell. And I suppose for other players here as well, thinking of like Stephen Fitzgerald, thinking about Delahunt as well, who's been released as well. It's this is the time of year for a professional rugby player, particularly when you're being released or leaving a club. It is an emotional time here with the bonds that you've created. And also Andy Friend kind of moving on. Same with Mossy Lawler, Senecal as well, the line-out forwards coach. So it was a kind of emotionally charged atmosphere inside the sports ground last weekend. I was at it. And to be fair, the players really did stand up and produce a very memorable performance. I suppose, Liam, looking at the contract news then, the news that John Muldoon returns back to the Connacht setup, and also news of Scott Vardy arriving as a defensive coach. I think 2 shrewd acquisitions here from Pete Wilkinson, Connacht Rugby, going into next season.
Yes, certainly. I mean, Johnny Muldoon, for what he's done at Bristol, absolutely. It was something I suppose was on the cards. It's still good to actually hear the confirmation. Scott Vardy, this is a guy who's done it all with Australia, who's done it with Leinster, and he's going to bring all that wealth of experience to Connacht. So an absolutely excellent signing. And to be fair, you could almost say a stronger coaching ticket than this season, in an overall context. And you have to be happy with that. I mean, Connacht are going places. This is a club which is still, I suppose, really undervalued, really underfunded, I suppose, in terms of the league for what they've done. Under Andy Friend, they've been far more consistent in his 5 seasons in charge. Hasn't been the yo-yo up and down. They pretty much have been in the same position each season. So Connacht are absolutely going places. The next thing, I guess, is to see, can they consistently be qualifying for European Cup and actually then qualifying in the European Cup for the playoffs.
Well, I think the legacy of Andy Friend is clear. I think the calibre of player and the calibre of coach coming into this ball club speaks volumes here in terms of the attractiveness of Connacht Rugby to an awful lot of people from the outside. I mean, Scott Vardy, I don't think has too much coaching experience, but what he does bring is a winning mentality as a player, and I think that will translate fairly quickly and rub off on the players. So I think it's a very astute move here. And again, I think a season here where again, things are moving in the right direction from Connacht Rugby, particularly in the sports ground redevelopment, the redevelopment of the training facilities. Everything's kind of pointing here towards a progressive Connacht Rugby brand in general. So I think it's exciting times here in Galway. And look, they will go to Scotstoun, really kind of buoyed up, in great form. And again, they'll just have to kind of focus on their performance, get the win, and see how the dice rolls come the end of round 18. But it's a great result here. And I suppose with Cardiff Rugby, again, it's really Welsh Shield or nothing here with themselves and the Ospreys, and they're facing off in round 18, which looks a very tantalisingly great fixture for that Welsh Shield conclusion. I suppose, Liam, the final game that we'll focus in on, I know Ulster Rugby had a comprehensive win over Dragons, and they've really secured a second place berth in the URC heading into the final round. But I suppose the Leinster Rugby 39-36 win in Johannesburg against the Lions, I thought that was a pretty standout performance, given that Leinster were 15 points down at one stage here and under the cosh. And I suppose an awful lot of media sound bites in terms of Sam Prendergast, but I thought for a squad and management that are over in South Africa, I thought this was a huge performance, particularly in the final quarter, to get a result.
Yeah, look. It was in some respects the Sam Prendergast show, right? But I mean, you had other guys like Cosgrove coming on. You had Turner at 13. Some real excellent players there coming through. There's definitely no shortage, but it's the fact that they kept going, as you said, at one stage they were down quite a number of points, kept going to the end and actually get that penalty in the last minute to come with the victory. And again, this is like an entirely second, probably almost like a third string that Leinster have, and to beat the full strength Lions is a super victory. But I suppose, look, we have to kind of everyone's talking about the full Leinster debut for Sam Prendergast, and he does appear to have everything, the kind of presence as a 20-year-old starting out that special players potentially have, in all facets, just unfazed, brings a kind of physicality in his defence, and then an actual incredible cutting edge in his attack. And I mean, we were wondering about who's going to replace the Sexton, and we were talking for many months and years of Billy Burns and Jack Carthy and Joey Carberry. But quite frankly, this lad comes on his first game, and it's like he's going to be fast tracked, I think.
I think he will be, and I think definitely at the start of the season, next season, with Leinster Rugby, you're seeing effective Ross Byrne, like Kieran Frawley, Johnny Sexton. Well, Johnny Sexton will be no longer part of the Leinster Rugby setup, but you can see the likes of Harry Byrne, I suppose, Sam Prendergast, Charlie Thector getting an awful lot of reps during the pre-season and during the start of the season. So, I mean, from a Prendergast perspective, he does lose confidence. I mean, what a magnificent season for the young man. I mean, really guided under 20s superbly well from 10. And he kind of showed that kind of presence here, proverbially thrown into the Lions' den here, Liam, to the Lions, who really showed some great cameos. I mean, they had 5 tries on the board here. Van der Merwe, Lombard, you had Lowe, you had Horn, you had a penalty try. So, I mean, on that, all that adversity, but Prendergast again, an awful lot of great signs here, but I think hopefully the media hype can stop with him. Just let him focus in on his game now. Just let him develop. He's going to have another tough game here against the Bulls for sure next weekend. But again, the signs are very positive here, and he just needs to develop now, really focus in on his game. And I suppose, as I said, Harry Byrne, Charlie Tector as well are going to be vying it for getting that backup berth to Ross Byrne probably next season, when all the Leinster players are back. So, but look, it's an impressive cameo. No, you can't really mask it anyway. I mean, led by example. His kicking was superb, passing range was on point as well, and defensively, very strong young man. So I think for Sean O'Brien, who's deputising as head coach over in Leinster Rugby, I think an awful lot of upside there. But I'm looking at Abeladze. I think Turner at 13. When you consider the likes of Ringrose and Henshaw here, Turner is an absolute footballer. A guy here that next season, I thought I was hugely impressed by him, Millen and Russell, and also Cosgrove as well. But I think across Abeladze as well, from a proper situation, gets his try, 30-metre run to start proceedings off. I mean, that's a guy here that has incredible upside. I know with the Georgian eligibility rule, but I think Liam.
What I will say, Mark, is I think that Abeladze has declared for Georgia in terms of the Rugby World Cup, which would make him a foreign player. So I'm not sure what his contract situation is going to be in terms of if he's non-Irish qualified, will they move him on this season or next even, But yeah, absolutely fabulous talent. And as he's a turner, we talk about 13s, and again, it's a position where really Ireland are quite threadbare after Gary Ringrose, I mean, you're thinking, who else? James Hume hasn't really stepped up, being honest about it. So next for me will be Antoine Frisch. And then absolutely Turner has to be a guy who will have a great chance in the future as well. And I must say Cosgrove as well, I was very impressed in terms of the full back berth. Yeah, and look, they have about 3 or 4 good players in every position.
Absolutely. I think it really did show the depth chart. I think from a South African public and media perspective, they see the potency of this Leinster Rugby franchise, to come over an awful lot of, all the marquee players literally back in Ireland and to produce a performance against the Lions. I know Lions will be bitterly disappointed how that last quarter went, didn't close out the game. Maybe it's a little bit of a trend in terms of the Lions this season. But again, take nothing away from the Leinster Rugby performance in altitude. For these guys, the French players, to get their opportunity, I think it was a phenomenal result. They remain unbeaten and they travel to the Transvaal to play the Bulls next weekend. Another great experience for those players, and also Sean O'Brien, who's at the helm at Leinster Rugby. So look, an awful lot of upside there. I suppose, Liam, there's been key contract news at Leinster as well. The likes of James Ryan, Caelan Doris, Josh van der Fleer as well, locking up long-term contracts. But I suppose Jack Nivenbayer's contract news at the weekend before that Lions fixture has really kind of raised a few eyebrows. But I mean, a shrewd appointment, I think, for Leinster Rugby to replace Stuart Lancaster. Your thoughts?
Yeah, like a shrewd appointment. He's going in now, as the Springboks basically head coach. He's going in as the second coach, basically, head coach to replace Stuart Lancaster. But effectively, he's the assistant coach to Leo Cullen. That's essentially it. So that'll be interesting to see how he goes. I think he certainly is going to be in there certainly for defensively. I mean, he was defensive coach at Munster. Munster were transformed, quite frankly, under Ian Aber. And then the Springboks at the World Cup again. I mean, a lot of that in terms of defensively was absolutely down to him. So that's clearly one of the ways is that the Leinster want to improve their defence. And also, I think that possibly in future years as well, coming because the South Africans, realistically, it'll be the South Africans that'll be playing in the URC semis and finals, and potentially even in European qualification knockout games. So that certainly would be useful to have Nina Aber on board for that as well. Now, of course, also they have they have Goodman from Canterbury there as well, who's going to be doing some backline, and then Sean O'Brien in terms of skills as well. So it's some interesting coaching appointments there for Leinster.
Again, more shrewd moves from Leinster Rugby, really kind of safeguarding their kind of coaching setup, the standards that they set. Stuart Lancaster has done an incredible job with Leinster Rugby in the last few years. So again, has assisted Leo Cullen no end. Now he gets his opportunity to be head coach in Racing 92. But again, I have no fear for Leinster, and I think, definitely that appointment here of Nibenauer, I think is very much an astute one. I think more from a defensive perspective, I think that'll kind of hone in the defensive line speed a little bit more. But also, I would say, as you say yourself, the South African scouting report, particularly on the teams in the URC, particularly, the physicality, how to counteract those South African teams. I think to have someone with that knowledge and that experience there will be kind of key. So I think exciting times again for Leinster, and I think, ominous enough for the rest of the Irish provinces in the URC that the Leinster Rugby board have really kind of made these progressive moves again to offset that Stuart Lancaster loss. Suppose, Liam, can we look at round 18, our final regular season? I know we started all the way back up September, October when we were previewing the URC. We're into the regular season finale here. So the fixtures on tap are Stormers versus Benetton, Ulster Rugby versus Edinburgh, Lions versus Zebre, Bulls versus Leinster Rugby, Dragons versus Scarlets, Sharks entertain Munster, Ospreys versus Cardiff, and Glasgow versus Connacht. I suppose let's get your reading of the Stormers versus Benetton game here. Who do you fancy on this one?
Yeah, I'd have to go with the Stormers to come striking back quite strongly. Again, you could see Benetton getting the 4 tries. You always could. But yeah, look, I think they'll get the 5-try bonus point win, and I think they'll have it wrapped up by half time. To be honest about it, in that sense, the Stormers, so they still have a chance of getting second in the table.
The Stormers didn't mask it. It was a huge disappointment for them against Munster Rugby. A loss here that really sets them back in terms of their battle for second place with Ulster Rugby. So Ulster having pole position on that. I just wonder about Benetton Rugby here, what the priorities are going to be in terms of that Challenge Cup semi-final against Toulon as well. Fast approaching. Will the coaching ticket here for Benetton rotate the side around here to keep them fresh for the next weekend? Yeah, I'm looking at it. Stormers, I think they will bounce back. I think there's a revenge mission here. I think there will be, probably a 20-25 point win here for the Stormers. And again, they're kind of looking then at Ulster Rugby, Edinburgh Rugby at the Kingspan. I suppose Ulster have put themselves in position here to become the second seed in the URC playoffs. Do you feel they'll secure that against Edinburgh Rugby on Friday night?
Yeah, Edinburgh can be kind of a tricky enough team to kind of analyse and to even to play against. But yeah, you'd have to say that, look, at home they probably will go all out. They'll secure it because not only do they get the 5-try bonus point, but they'll actually get a kind of a good points differential, I think, as well. I think they'll get somewhere between 15 and 20 points of a win as well. So I think it's going to be comfortable second half, I think, for Ulster.
I'm kind of thinking that too. Edinburgh Rugby, it's been a massively disappointing URC season. No point in masking it any other way. I mean, they were up there, thereabouts before Christmas, but their form has just hit it off a cliff after the new year. Yeah, I think Ulster Rugby, there's a massive prize at stake here, being a home seed, particularly in the quarter-final, also semi-final as well. So I think from that perspective here, Liam, I think Ulster Rugby have to embrace this. I think there's a bonus point there for them well before the final quarter. Edinburgh will play open rugby as well, and they will give opportunities here for Ulster. I suppose Lions face Zebre. Zebre 0 for 17. Is it going to be 0 for 18 come Saturday afternoon here, Liam?
Yeah, sometimes miracles do happen, but not in the case of Zebre Rugby. Simply not going to happen. So I don't think we even to discuss that much. Yeah, they're going to get a bit of a hammering, to be honest with you. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think the Lions will be out for a revenge mission as well, given how that Leinster Rugby game finished off. Again, they showed an awful lot of good signs attacking-wise, but again, closing out the game was a big issue for them. Again, I think Lions will finish off their season pretty strongly. I think a 25-30 point win here against Zebre. And I suppose from an Italian Rugby Federation perspective, what did they do with Zebre? I think that's a long-term analysis to make them competitive. They have to be competitive here to make the Italian national team competitive. So I think that'll be a fascinating post-mortem there in Zebre come the end of the season. Bulls versus Leinster Rugby. So Leinster Rugby conquering Johannesburg. Will they conquer the Transvaal this Saturday, Bulls?
Look, to be fair, it's like with Munster as well. It's very hard to put two back-to-back games and performances together like that in South Africa. I think that the Bulls will put up a big, hefty second half, pulling away scoreline against Leinster. So it'll be 5-try bonus point for the Bulls. And it has to be said too, a good points differential, because I think at the moment there's something like 11 points differential between Munster and the Bulls. So they'll be aiming to hit that as well. And I think they will succeed in that.
Because, I mean, you're looking at the table here. Bulls currently sitting on 7th here, kind of looking over the shoulder, particularly with the Sharks, particularly for that 8th spot. And I suppose top 7, we're probably thinking you need to be kind of in that safety net for Champions Rugby next season. So, I mean, the Bulls, there's an awful lot of motivation here to produce a performance. But I think the Leinster side will deserve massive respect. And, I mean, if they haven't gotten it down in South Africa after the Johannesburg game, then I don't know what will. I think for me, Leinster will get a bonus point, but I think Bulls, with the motivation here to get into playoffs, get Champions Cup Rugby next season, I think they win this by maybe 10-14. but I think it's going to be a pretty high-scoring affair here. Definitely in the Loftus-Versfeld. Dragons versus Scarlets. I mean, probably a dead rubber game here in all intents and purposes here. Scarlets starting round 18 on 14th place. Dragons just below them on 15. Who do we fancy here on this one to kind of close out the season? I suppose for Scarlets, bit of confidence going into a Challenge Cup maybe.
Yeah, but again, is it a case of next week? I mean, teams like, as you pointed out, Benetton and now the Scarlets have a real chance of getting to the final. You know what I mean? And getting the European place. And you kind of wonder what kind of a team sheet they're going to put out this week. I just actually feel that the Dragons will actually get the win. It'll be a tight enough game, but maybe 5 or 6 points. Dragons, I think that this week it's mostly going to be home wins for the teams in the URC, and I'm going to stick with that.
I think the Challenge Cup, Champions Cup calendar schedules coming fast approaching. I think you raise a good point there in terms of Scarlets particularly. Are they going to rest a few marquee players? I think definitely front five they will. That will give Dragons an opportunity, but I'm still going to go with Scarlets. I just haven't been convinced with Dragons in the last few weeks here, Liam, in the rounds. They've really kind of slipped away, particularly after a very good start of the season. You know, we think of that notable win against Munster Rugby and Rodney Parade. You know, there was good signs there, but since Christmas, I think it has been very much one-way traffic here. I think Scarlets just maybe by 3 points, but again, I think that'll be a very entertaining game to finish off the season. Sharks versus Munster here, Liam. You were hinting here that you reckon the Sharks will win this one.
I think it's going to be another 6 tries or 5 or 7 tries to 6 or just the scoreline is going to be happening here. And so Munster, you know, we definitely need that extra point to finish ahead of the Bulls, and I think we certainly will get that. In terms of our team selection, I think we're just going to have to freshen it up this week. I'd like to see Joey at 10. I'd like to see Kilcoyne, Salanoa as props. You know, I'd like to see pretty much even John O'Sullivan into the back row. You know, Jack O'Donoghue, and we can do that. We can pretty much field Earlsey as well. You know, we can pretty much field almost an entirely different 15 from last week and still achieve our goal of getting that point, and I think we'll do that.
We'll get the job done in terms of securing A, maybe a bonus point, but B, probably maybe a loser bonus point. I think there's a little bit of revenge really from Munster Rugby after that Sharks outing a few weeks ago to right a few wrongs. I think the side will definitely freshen up for sure, Liam. After that attritional battle against the Stormers, that big result, there will be changes here. I think I would hope to see, like as you said, like Carberry. I would say Craig Casey will come back in as well. Be nice to see Keith Earls coming in. As you say, there will be fundamental changes, I think, in that front five. Schneiman's out with concussion, obviously. So maybe Finian Wycherley comes back in. Obviously, the likes of Kilcoyne will come in. Maybe Salanoa as well. So I think from that perspective, I think they will be competitive. Hopefully, the lessons learned against the Sharks can be applied again. I still will tip the Sharks. Sharks currently in 8th place here, 46 points. They will need, with a bonus point win here, to really kind of cement that and hope that results go their way to really kind of, you know, look for a top 7 spot here. Yeah, it'll be an interesting one, I think, here, but I think Sharks probably by 7 to 10 points. Again, the weather in Durban on Saturday is sunny, 25 degrees. So again, Munster know what they're getting themselves in for. It's almost identical weather to what happened 3 weeks ago. So I think the lessons learned mantra will be definitely tested out by Munster Rugby next weekend. So then we get to the Welsh Shield. Again, it's between the Ospreys and Cardiff. Would we feel is going to lift that Welsh Shield, Liam?
Yeah, I mean, look, I suppose all season we were expecting big things from Cardiff, but I think when it comes to it, I think the Ospreys actually will win. I think if I remember rightly, last season it came down literally to the final game as well, and the Ospreys had a really excellent victory. And I think that's the way it's going to be again this season for the Ospreys to basically be the Welsh representative in the European Cup next season. They have a lot of the stars of the Welsh team playing for the Ospreys as well. And yeah, I think that they will finish the season very much in style. 4-try bonus point, all singing, all dancing performance from the Ospreys.
Yeah, I kind of go along with you there because being in sports corner last weekend, Cardiff Rugby, it was a poor performance. So I think from that perspective, there'll be an awful lot of soul searching in that ball club ahead of this key game with the Ospreys. Again, Welsh Shield here is on the line here. Ospreys kind of coming in here with good run of form. You know, they have been competitive in Europe. And I think for Toby Booth, the franchise as well, it'll be key to kind of secure another Welsh Shield here. Now, I know there's going to be an awful lot of comings and goings in that ball club in the next few weeks, but I think from an Ospreys perspective, this would be a nice end to the season, I would say. I would go Ospreys. I would say, yeah, bonus point here against Cardiff. And I suppose finally, Glasgow Rugby against Connacht Rugby. Now, I suppose there's question marks over this Glasgow Warriors team. You know, there's a Challenge Cup semi-final against the Scarlets the following weekend. Do you think, Liam, that the Glasgow Warriors will go all out for this game? Or will they start resting a few players, giving Connacht maybe an opportunity of a rare win in Scotstoun here on Saturday night?
Yeah, I suppose unlike the likes of Benetton and Scarlets, I can't imagine Glasgow having much interest even in winning the Challenge Cup. You know, maybe prestige and get to the final or something, or in the final. But I mean, they're probably locked in for fourth place. They should probably be concentrating on that. They've already qualified for Europe as well. So, yeah, but I think they'll feel they're quite a reasonably strong team. Yeah, absolutely. For Connacht, again, it's more on the line. It's more do or die. They have to get something from this to guarantee probably, 7th spot. And even at that, probably not guarantee European rugby. But, yeah, I mean, Connacht are capable of getting losing a bonus point. There's no doubt about that. To make things very interesting for I suppose the next week or two in terms of European qualification. And I think Connacht will bring it down to the wire. They will get the losing bonus point to keep their European rugby qualification alive.
It'll be an interesting one here, Liam. I think it all really depends on the Glasgow Warriors' mindset going into this game. I can see them probably front-loading here an awful lot within the first 50 minutes and then withdraw players. I still think a Challenge Cup is a European silverware. Glasgow haven't been really blessed with an awful lot of silverware in their franchise. They have been very competitive in recent seasons. So I think from that perspective, it's a glorious opportunity for them to get into that European Cup final weekend if you can beat Scarlet. So I don't think there's anything soft here from Connacht. And I think Connacht really, there's a few road trip concerns for me. Particularly the last one against Benetton Rugby was a bit of a nightmare. So again, Glasgow will probably come out here looking to basically close this game out as quickly as possible. So I think for Connacht, the first 2 quarters are going to be absolutely key. Saying that, if Glasgow do have a good front-loaded, strong lineup here, I don't think there's going to be a whole pile between these two teams. I think there is bonus point for both of these teams, yes. I probably would just hedge it just to Glasgow. But again, I think from a Connacht Rugby perspective, I would not be surprised if they won, I think, 3 to 5 points. I think this is a finale game here where an awful lot of teams will be looking at this result and wondering where in the pecking order they will be. So I don't see this game. I see this game going down to the wire here, Liam. I seriously do. And it'll be such an epic finale for the regular season. I'll just hedge it to Glasgow Warriors, only just. But I think Connacht Rugby have an awful lot of upside in form here. But they do have to address those kind of lapses in their road form here to really kind of get a good result here and maybe Pippin Munster for that 5th spot. I suppose, Liam, predictions-wise then, in terms of the last 8, this is for me, audio for future reference. I have Leinster v the Sharks, Ulster Connacht, Stormers Bulls, Glasgow versus Munster.
Yeah, look, yeah. I actually maybe just have to say this that Glasgow Connacht game is on last.
Yeah.
The 7:30 kickoff. So, in actual fact, of all the teams, Connacht will know exactly what they have to do to qualify. You'd think that should give them a bit more of an advantage. But yeah, I'm going to go pretty much the same as yourself. I'm going to go obviously Leinster, but then Ulster. Then Stormers, Glasgow, Munster 5th, Bulls 6th. I'll have to go with 7th probably with Sharks and 8th Connacht.
Oh, wow.
So then we're just changing on the last 2 basically.
Yeah.
We're saying that it's probably going to be the probably Leinster, Connacht, and then Ulster Sharks. The other fixtures being the same.
Yeah, I think there's going to be so many permutations during these games that we're probably a little bit foolhardy for even making that prediction call. But no, I think it's going to be a very exciting weekend here, Liam, even starting from Friday night, really, between the Ulster and Stormer games as well, just to see who's going to secure that second spot in the league as well, which is going to be key because, you know, that second seed will have home field advantage all the way to the semi-final. So I think for the Stormers, that'll be a bitter pill to swallow, given that they were so prominent during the year that they could be pipped by Ulster Rugby right at the end. So I think there's so many subplots here. I mean, Leinster up, gone, their top seed, but from 2 down, I think there's so many subplots here that it's going to be an absolutely fabulous end to the URC season. And again, an organiser's dream here, really going into the playoffs in a few weeks, Liam.
Yeah, it's been a brilliant season overall. Honestly, goodness, from the very first round 1 fixtures. And again, I'm going to say this: I think the URC is far superior to the Premiership now in England in every way. Yeah, I mean that bodes well for the Scottish teams. I think they've come up. Scotland in general have come up, and the Italian rugby has been helped by this, and the rising tide lifts all boats, as I said. And yeah, it's going to be just a kind of another super Saturday fixture list.
No, absolutely, Liam. No, really going to be looking forward to it. Be edge of the seat stuff from minute 1 there on Friday right up until Saturday evening when Connacht and Glasgow do battle in Scotstoun. I suppose, Liam, we'll leave it there. I mean, a lengthy one tonight, but I think quite a few topics that we need to cover. I suppose next week we'll review the round 18 URC regular season games, see the winners, the losers, maybe get a reflection from you in terms of the teams in the URC, and also focus in on the Challenge Cup and Champions Cup next weekend. There will be also semi-finals. So until then, Liam, have a great weekend and we'll chat next week.
Yeah, and you enjoy the rugby this weekend, Mark.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.